Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Prep Rally. This is Jeff Squared, Jeff Bursch, joined by Jeff Latofsky of the Pueblo Chieftain. We're here mostly to talk about football. It's hard to believe it's middle of November already, and we're already a week into the prep playoffs for 5A, 4A, 3A. Some of the others are getting close to ending, but we do have two teams left in Class 4A here in Pueblo, Pueblo West and Pueblo South. Both still alive, both very impressive first-round wins last week, South beating Montrose, and Pueblo West at home beat Stanley Lake. I'm going to pose one question to you here, Jeff. Is it too early to start thinking about a South versus West championship game?
Never too early, Jeff. And, the one thing that I've always thought, if that ever happened, that the state might move the game down to Pueblo.
Down to here.
I don't see that happening because obviously they have it rented, at Sports Authority or Mile High or whatever it's called now, and it would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
To see both teams here, and it's real unusual, Jeff, because most of the time, and this is just not in football, but every other sport, it seems like, and it's not because of what the state does, maybe it is, but the Pueblo teams always seems to be on the same side of the bracket.
Right.
And they're very rarely on the opposite side. So this could be a real exciting time for Pueblo because there's an opportunity here that we haven't seen in many, many years.
Yeah, you mentioned that state championship game would be up at the home of the Broncos, but it sure would be fun if it was at Dutch Clark. And, if that does happen, maybe the city of Pueblo can just go north for the weekend and have a good showing up there. Yeah, so, you were out at Pueblo West last week and saw the Cyclones open with their win over Stanley Lake. What struck you as most impressive with what Pueblo West was able to do?
Well, I'll take the mic here. The one thing that struck me, I think, the most, Jeff, is Pueblo West didn't complete a pass. And so they rolled up over 500 yards just on the ground. And you're talking about Pierre Taylor, who's a home run hitter, for no doubt about it. And so when you have a home run hitter on your team, you have a chance in any football game. He had 307 yards of offense. Really, they were running out the clock at the end, and he broke a 79-yarder, and that put him over 300. So up to that point, he had 230, 240 yards, which is quite a day for any high school player. I know I played for a long time, and I don't think I had 240 yards in a season. But it was, they're a team that just comes at you. They attack offensively. They have a great line. Mm-hmm. They run power football. It's nothing fancy, Jeff. They're just going to come at you, and they were tearing up chunks and chunks of yardage. Pierre Taylor averaged over 10 yards a carry. Wilkinson, the quarterback, Jacob is another. He's a big man. And, we call him a man. He's only 18 years old, but he's a big guy, and he's fast. And so once he gets outside, and then they'll run a couple other. Matthew Rudd is a sophomore. He stepped in when because of a couple injuries. Devin Morgan has been down most of the year. So Matt Rudd all of a sudden has become a factor, and he had over 100 yards in that game. So, this is a team that is a dangerous team, and I know Chatfield. We'll talk about them a little bit. They're a team that really is. They remind me a lot of Pueblo South. Nobody stopped them. They're averaging, I don't know what they're averaging. They're averaging 48, and Pueblo South's averaging over 45 points a game. So, this is an offense that really no one's been able to handle. I've talking to some coaches around the state. They say Chatfield could play 5A, and they could maybe compete with Valor Christians, the Valor Christians of the world, maybe Mullen and Cherry Creeks. And, of course, a couple of years ago, they were competing with them. They were in 5A, so team playing with a lot of confidence. I expect a high-scoring game out of this one. Neither defense is fabulous defense, right, but they play hard, and they're going to have to scheme the other team. And I know, it's not hard to scheme Pueblo West. You just have to try to put maybe 9 or 10 people at the line. But what happens then? All of a sudden, Pierre Taylor is a kid that can make moves at the line, and he runs into space, and once he gets in the open space, it's Katie bar the door. He's gone, and it's good night. So this is a team that this is the kind of game that you really expect when you get to this deep in the playoffs.
Yeah, Chatfield, as you mentioned, was a 5A program, and a proud 5A program. The likes of Lendale White have played there. So, he was a pretty good player. I'll say honestly, I think he was the best high school football player I've seen in person. Very
We
impressive.
never got to see Terry Miller.
No, I did not.
Terry Miller was pretty good.
But yeah, Chatfield's a very potent offense, and really the only other team that Pueblo West has faced with that potent of an offense was South, and they put 54 points up and lost. So, like you said, high scoring game. I would definitely expected a lot of running, although Chatfield does throw the ball some too. So yeah, definitely an interesting quarterfinal game that could be easily a semifinal, if not championship quality
No doubt about it.
football game. So yeah, and then I was over at Pueblo South last weekend. They opened with a pretty impressive win over Montrose too, stopping the Indians almost from the start and just kept their offense rolling like it has all season, put up another 41. It's the 9th time in 11 games they've scored over 40 points, and like you mentioned with Chatfield, they really haven't been stopped or slowed. And Zach Cozzolino at quarterback threw his 40th and 41st touchdown passes, which is just incredible.
That's NFL-like.
Yeah, it's video game-like. He's thrown 5 interceptions all season too. The weapons he has is just incredible, though. I know, we've talked about Marcel Barbie and Thomas Pedunzio all season, and I think they've combined for over 30 touchdown catches. And Jeremy Cody's really come on late and been a threat down the stretch from his tight end position. And Jesse Anzar is a real good receiver. And then Steve Brock, who we really haven't talked about a lot this season, kind of overshadowed by the passing game.
Silently rolled up almost, 1,500 yards.
Yeah, and almost 1,500 yards last week, 211, 4 touchdowns, which was half his season total in one game. So South's a very dangerous team, and they caught a break with a couple losses on their side of the bracket. Windsor, the number 2 seed, lost to Broomfield. And, Vista Ridge, the team they're going to play this week, upset Fruita Monument out on the western slope. So, I definitely, I would say at this point, South's the favorite on that side of the bracket to make the state championship game.
I think in talking to some of the South people on the South side, when the brackets did come out, the one thing that I heard, from all the coaches was they were hoping to stay away from Chatfield. And that's exactly what's happened. And really, they've got a couple breaks here on this. And, that's what people talk about. Not only you have to be good and you have to stay healthy during the season, but you have to get lucky. Mm-hmm. And South's maybe got a little bit of luck going their way with this matchup. But, I know a little bit about Vista Ridge. They came down here a couple years ago for a scrimmage. And I'll tell you what, this is a team that's pretty dangerous as well, Jeff, because what they do, they spread you out, and they go into the spread formation, except they don't throw out of it as much as that you'd think they would. So for every 10 snaps, maybe 7 or 8 will be running plays. And then once in a while they'll throw the football. So, but, I think what's going to happen is South had to adjust last week. It took them about a quarter to adjust to what Montrose was doing. The one thing South does have for their advantage, they have some people up in the catbird seat that are watching. And there's some coaches up there that are really, really good, and they understand the game. And eventually we might do a story on them or two, because those are, there's always somebody behind the scenes that makes it that makes a team great, and there's a couple guys up there that know exactly what's going on, and so, but they may have to. It may take a quarter or so for them to adjust to Vista Ridge, because they spread you out so much, and it's just all about matchups, and it's one-on-one stuff. The thing that I was impressed with South during the course of the year has been their defensive line has really come on. Yeah. They got some kids in their defensive line that there were some question marks there, but they have a sophomore that's really playing well. Their nose guard's playing well. I mean, they have some, and you know what? They'll hit you. Yeah. And if you come down here and expect not to get hit, then you've got another thing coming, because this team will knock you upside the head. And that's been really one of the advantages that the South has had over the course of this stretch in this season, is they hit hard, and they, football, that's what the game's about, isn't it? And so, I see a great matchup coming up.
Yeah, South, I had a story in today's paper about their defense, and just, how impressive they've been, and maybe been overshadowed by the offense, but
a little bit. Yeah, I would say
they've definitely played well. I know a lot of the touchdowns they've allowed came, after South built a big lead, and some came against their second team. And They took it to a Ponderosa team that was one of the state's top offenses. And, even last week, Montrose, they rolled up almost 300 yards of offense, but, only 7 points. And, South buckled down when it had to. You mentioned the big hits. There were quite a few of those. And they turned, the Indians over twice. And they've just done the things that you need to do all season to get the wins and to give their offense back the ball to have the chance to be the explosive offense it is.
Right. I want to touch on maybe a couple other subjects. When we get this deep into the playoffs, Jeff, everybody's good. Mm-hmm. Offenses are good, defenses are good. Now we got to turn to the third part of the game with the special teams, and that's one of the differences. I think that South has an advantage. Yeah. They have, especially their return team. They have Panunzio, they have Barbie. These guys are scary good, and they can take it to the house at any time. And a couple years ago, South had a kicker and a punter and a guy. I mean, he just dominated the game. From the kicking standpoint. So, this time South doesn't have the strength of a punter and a kicker like they've had in the past, but they have the return team to match it. So that's the one thing I'm going to look for in both of these games, and really all the games at this point of the season. They come down to not making mistakes. South's been really fortunate. They haven't turned the ball over a whole lot. You mentioned five interceptions. They've lost a couple fumbles along the way, but the turnovers and the special teams is maybe what's going to be the difference down the stretch here as teams fight for this state championship.
Yeah, and Pueblo West has some threats on its special teams as well.
Oh, no doubt.
Naomi Smyer-Williams, he returned 2 kickoffs for touchdowns against South in that win. So yeah, definitely could play an important role in the postseason.
Right. And we did want to mention the 2 other teams in Southern Colorado. Centauri is also still alive in the playoffs, and they will be at home, unlike what we published over the last couple of weeks. And Lahana's going to be on the road. They go up to Eaton, and Lahana's the defending champion. And they got a tough road. Eaton has really been a team that sort of snuck up on people. I don't think that everybody expected them to be as good as they've been.
Yeah, the Tigers have a chance to get to that championship game and defend their title. So obviously a huge game on the road. Their first 2 have been at home, so quite a challenge.
Well, hopefully we'll be talking about the 2 more Pueblo teams moving on in the playoffs and into the semifinals next week, and maybe a Pueblo championship if we can get that lucky.
Absolutely.
For Jeff and Jeff Squared, so long.